Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche, and this week I want to build on what we were talking about last week with Michigan's rare species regulation and focus this week on rare species regulation at the federal level. So specifically talking about the Endangered Species Act, or ESA for short. And this one also recently celebrated its 50th anniversary back at the end of 2023. So the Endangered Species Act was signed into law with strong bipartisan support in December of 1973 by President Richard Nixon. And to quote him, he said, "Nothing is more priceless and more worthy of preservation than the rich array of animal life with which our country has been blessed. It is a many-faceted treasure of value to scholars, scientists, and nature lovers alike, and it forms a vital part of the heritage we all share as Americans, in which we hold in trust to countless future generations of our fellow citizens." Under this law, many partners have collaborated to conserve, protect, and recover hundreds of species from the brink of extinction. Currently, 1,662 species are listed as threatened or endangered, and the law involves every state in the Union and territory. So no matter where you live, there are species listed under the Endangered Species Act that you should know about. So why is this law important? It's been called foundational. It is based on the best available science. It's considered one of the world's most important conservation laws and most powerful laws passed in history. The ESA is a highly effective regulation that has been credited with saving 99% of the species that are listed under the law from extinction. So that's a pretty good track record. Over 100 plant and animal species have either been delisted based on recovery or reclassified from endangered to threatened based on improved conservation status. So some examples of delisted species include the bald eagle, the peregrine falcon, and well known to us in Michigan, the Kirtland's warbler, as well as the gray whale, to give a marine example. Through collaborations with federal agencies, tribes, state and local governments, conservation organizations, and private citizens, hundreds more species listed under the ESA are now stable or improving. So this federal regulation has also helped to protect millions of acres of forests and mountains, rivers, deserts, beaches, oceans, and other habitats for these rare species. Because as I mentioned last week, these species can't survive without their landscape ecosystems. 2 federal agencies have the responsibility to enforce the Endangered Species Act. Those include the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which takes the lead on terrestrial and freshwater species, and NOAA Fisheries, which takes the lead on marine species. And NOAA stands for National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So these agencies are really charged with rare species recovery, developing recovery plans and implementing those plans with myriad partners, to consult with federal agencies about their actions to make sure that they're not adversely impacting rare species, And third, to prevent take. So that's like physical harm or disturbance that reduces the species' ability to thrive. And so there are an awful lot of different definitions that are involved when it comes to the ESA. I'll provide some links with, the really official language, but I guess what I want you to understand is that there are some terms like listed species, and that's referring to species that have been federally listed as endangered or threatened. So on the Michigan Natural Features Inventory site I showed you last week, that designation is shortened to the letters LE or LT. And under this law, endangered is a species that is in danger of extinction throughout all or a significant portion of its range. Examples of federally endangered species include piping plover, a number of our freshwater mussels like raid bean and snuffbox, Heinz emerald dragonfly, the lovely Carner blue butterfly, Mitchell satyr butterfly, and Pauschik skipperling, as well as mammals like gray wolf, Indiana bat, and northern long-eared bat. And in Michigan, the only federally endangered plant is the Michigan monkey flower at this time. Federally threatened species are those that are likely to become endangered within the foreseeable future throughout all or a significant portion of their range. And examples of threatened species include Rufa red knot, round hickory nut mussel, American heart's tongue fern, as well as the beautiful dwarf lake iris and eastern prairie fringed orchid, the often overlooked pitcher's thistle, as well as mammals like Canada lynx, and another often overlooked species, eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. Candidate species are any for which the service has sufficient information on its biological status and threats to propose it as endangered or threatened under the ESA, but for which development of a proposed listing regulation is precluded by other higher priority listing activities. So an example we have here in Michigan, Blanding's turtle is currently under review through either candidate or petition. Any citizen can petition the federal agencies to list, reclassify, or delist a species. So that's one in particular in Michigan that Fish and Wildlife Service is taking a hard look at for potential listing. So candidate species at the federal level are similar to special concern species that we talked about under Michigan's regulations. They're worried about their status. They could be proposed for listing in the future, but they aren't afforded actual take protection. There's no legal teeth at that candidate designation. So monarch is an example of a species that was a candidate and then very recently has been sort of upgraded into the proposed listed status. So there's also a proposed endangered or proposed threatened status. Monarch is being or is under the proposed threatened status currently. And this is where the service has done a very thorough and rigorous review and has proposed a draft rule to list the species. Again, the species still does not have take protection under Section 9 of the ESA until the rule to list it is finalized. And then there's one more ESA specific term I wanted to talk about, and that is designated critical habitat. So that's a defined geographical area that's occupied by the listed species, that has physical and biological features that are essential to that species conservation. So basically, it is protected habitat that federal agencies must consult with Fish and Wildlife Service or NOAA Fisheries to ensure that any actions they take, they fund, authorize, or undertake don't adversely modify or destroy the species habitat. So that's a pretty significant difference between Michigan's endangered species law and the federal law. Michigan's doesn't have the ability to designate habitat, physical habitat for the species. So it's pretty awesome that at the federal level there is that really critical habitat protection layer. So I think with any regulation, it's important to understand what you can't do, and take prohibitions are under Section 9 of the Endangered Species Act, and that makes it illegal to import, export, or take endangered species for any purpose. Take means to harass, hunt, shoot, capture, trap, kill, collect, wound, harm, or pursue a species or attempt any of these activities. There is more flexibility on take permitting as it relates to federally threatened species under Section 4D of the Endangered Species Act. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty, but generally that's what you should not do based on the Endangered Species Act. For example, in Michigan, we do have designated critical habitat for piping plover nesting along the Great Lakes shorelines, and so you'll see signs like I had there. You'll see cages around occupied nests to help protect those species. And then another real world example, this is my mom standing next to pitcher's thistle after I talked to her about what it was and what it looks like and not to step on it on a birding tour that we had taken. I want to finish by focusing on what we can do to help these federally listed species. Even though they're rare, this example shows you can encounter them fairly easily in nice habitats. And so I just want to stress that rare species recovery and conservation will continue to require strong partnerships and communities willing to know, understand, and steward these rare species. As the 50th celebration approached at the end of 2023, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service offered up 5 simple ways you as an individual can help our imperiled species. So I just want to chat about those quickly. The first was something near and dear to my heart, to plant native plants to help our pollinators and other wildlife species thrive. So if you want to learn more about that, I highly encourage you to join your local Wild Ones chapter. The Xerces Society is another great group. For the folks local to my store, the Mid-Mitten chapter of Wild Ones, I'm doing a Designing with Native Plants talk on Monday, March 10th of this year. So you can come and hear that if you haven't and get some help with choosing native plants for your yard. The second idea was to volunteer your time on public lands or with local nature organizations. So volunteers play a critical role in meeting rare species conservation goals. So you can help at a national wildlife refuge, national parks, or fish hatcheries, or at the state or local municipal level or on tribal lands. And also local nature centers and land conservancies. So Very local examples to our store would be the Shiawassee National Wildlife Refuge, Chippewa Nature Center, and Little Forks Conservancy as local group examples. The third idea was to make your home a haven for wildlife and be a habitat hero for our local wildlife species. So that includes conserving and planting more native plants, decreasing the use of pesticides, adopting bird-friendly practices like turning off your lights, especially during spring and fall migration, making sure you're taking actions to prevent bird window strikes, keep your pets inside or leashed or fenced to help decrease the chance of them disturbing our wildlife or killing them. Watch and report wildlife sightings through a myriad of citizen science projects. Offer safe water features as well as native plants. Leave your leaves and save your stems to help promote healthy habitat, and reduce or eliminate your use of salt in the environment to protect our lands and waters. The fourth is to stop the spread of invasive species, and you do this by cleaning your gear, your boats, your vehicles, your clothing, pet fur if your pet's been out with you, staying on trails and avoid walking or moving through infested areas. Don't dump or release pets or aquarium contents into our landscape ecosystems. Don't move firewood as well. And the fifth idea is to learn about and help educate others and encourage others to take action to protect our imperiled species in our own communities. So I hope this helps you understand what the Endangered Species Act is about and gives you a sense of some of the species you can help protect. Take care and have a good week.